Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call the special council meeting for Tuesday, January 16th to order. At this time, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the city of Colwood lies within the traditional territories of the Algonquin-speaking people, the Kasepsum and Songhees nations. We'd like to thank them for sharing these lands in peace and friendship. Item 2 is approval of agenda. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt today's agenda? Okay, thank you very much. And although any opposed? Seeing none. And I'd just like to welcome Councillor Day. She's virtual. Thanks for showing up, Councillor Day. So motion's carried. Delegations, I'd like to welcome Maureen Sawa, Greater Victoria Public Library CEO, and Andrew Appleton, the chair of the GVPL Board of Trustees. And I understand you have a presentation for us. Which one? Both? Okay, come on up, please.
I guess I'll begin. Good evening, Mayor Kobayashi, mayors, members of council. My name is Andrew Appleton. I am the chair. I've had the great honor of being the chair of the Greater Victoria Public Library Board, and I'm your colleague councillor with the District of Oak Bay. I have today with me, I have Maureen Sawa, who is the CEO of the GVPL. And I'd like to, although he's not actually present, I just wanted to recognize the service of Councillor Ward on the library board. He is Colwood's trustee. I've had the pleasure of working with him over the past year, and he's done an exceptional job. His commitment to the library board is very clear, and have really appreciated his contributions in all aspects of the board's operations. So really appreciate his time and his efforts. I really enjoy working with him. The commitment of all of the 10 member municipalities in the GVPL is very critical, is very appreciated, and is very recognized. I just want to point out that this is the library system is a place where every citizen belongs. We're committed to being the community's living room, the community's meeting space, and library branches are that all-important third space, offering a place for citizens of all backgrounds to gather and access information, and it is a completely barrier-free type of environment. So we're very, very proud of what we offer, and it is an equitable place for access to information, services, and resources. So I would like to thank and express my thanks to the City of Colwood Council for your continued support. We're very proud of the work we do. I'm very proud of the role that I play, and we know that you believe, as we do, in the transformative power of libraries. So with that, I will hand it over to Maureen for the balance of the presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have afterwards.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Mayor and Council and staff. It's really a treat to be here in person tonight. I'd like to start the way I always start these presentations, to just provide you some context regarding GVPL. GVPL system does serve 10 of the 13 municipalities in the Capital Regional District, as illustrated in the map. Our shared service model, which is funded by the 10 member municipalities, enables residents, I was going to say restaurants, but not residents within each individual municipality to have access to a full range of services and resources that only a large urban library system can offer. So we are actually defined as a large urban library system, according to the Canadian Urban Library Council. So this does allow us to provide all of our member municipalities with the standard of service that would not be possible for any one municipality to offer individually. So we like to say GVPL is your place to connect, discover, and imagine. And we truly are the definition of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. As Councillor Appleton said, GVPL provides free and equitable access to library services to meet the changing needs of the residents of Greater Victoria. So we have a few statistics. We still are in the process of calling all of the 2023 numbers, but just of particular interest, I think, tonight, new memberships that were recorded as of November 30th, 2023 1,847 new cardholders for the Juan de Fuca branch. That's actually the third highest new cardholder number in the system. Library visits, in-person visits to the branch, as well as our online visits, quite increased. Again, I believe you're the number 3 or number 4 out of the 12 branches that we operate. Again, items borrowed, quite a high number for the Juan de Fuca branch. And our programs, as we still emerge from the COVID days, you know, our programming is starting to expand. The VERCS, Vancouver Island Regional Refugee Service does do a series of programs at the Juan de Fuca branch for English for newcomers. We've also done quite a lot of interesting things over the last year that we don't have firm numbers on at this point, but things such as establishing water bottle stations at all of our branches. And we're very proud that each one of the GVPL branches has a menstrual product distribution machine so that we can make this material available to people. And our summer reading club program this year beat all records. It was over 9,000 children participated across the system. As we just noted, public libraries are the community's living room. We're so proud of the work that we've been done, particularly as we're closing out the strategic bridge plan that I know the mayor is familiar with, our strategic bridging plan from 2021 to 2023. And one of the things that we have really been emphasizing is our role as a safe third space. It's really never been more important. And as you can see, we've established a decal program in cooperation with the city of Victoria so that it's pretty clear when people enter our facilities that everyone is welcome. In the slides, if you've had a chance to review them, you'll note that there's a number of references made to a report published by the Canadian Urban Institute this past fall entitled "Overdue: The Case for Canada's Public Libraries." I just want to quote from an article in the Globe and Mail that related to that report. And it was noted that, quote, "Despite dire predictions that bricks and mortar libraries would become obsolete in the digital age, they have become even more important in recent years as essential community hubs." And the headline for his piece was, quote, "Paying more attention to the health and social benefits of libraries is overdue." Another quote from the article was from the Boston Public Library, saying that the biggest service libraries provide is simply its space, giving people a place to be for free. And we really, the library board, I'm very proud that they take this very literally. There's some images of your Juan de Fuca branch that is a district branch for the West Shore. Over the past year, we've done some more incremental, improvements to the layout to make it more space hospitable. It is a beautiful branch, I have to say. It's a real fantastic branch for people to come in. We are looking forward to doing more and more programming at that branch. As I mentioned, our strategic bridging plan is building a bridge to a better future. It came to an end at the end of 2023, and we're looking forward to reporting on the achievements of this plan later on in the year. We're looking also ahead to the next iteration of our strategic planning cycle. The Planning and Policy Committee of the board is recommending that GVPL adopt the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a primary method to communicate the social impacts of GVPL's next strategic plan, and we are really excited by the work ahead. Just to kind of briefly touch on some of the goals of the strategic bridge plan, public libraries empower and enrich communities. We've done quite a lot of expansion on our resources for those with print disabilities, as well as expanding our world languages collection. And as we all know, compliance with the Accessible BC and British Columbia Act, we will continue to champion equity, diversity, inclusivity, and accessibility for all library users. One of the big achievements that was just recently announced is that we have removed overdue fines. And we are now finally, we are joining, there's 50 other library systems of the 71 library systems in British Columbia that have done this. And it's basically a trend right across Canada and the United States. It is a really effective way to remove barriers of usage. So far, anecdotally, I'm told that about 22% of our users have come back because of no more blocked cards. So that's a real achievement for this board. Public libraries are community anchors, as we've noted, expanding our Sunday hours, hosting more events, and our partnerships with newcomer programs and social planning council. Again, this is all something that will be reported on in our next annual report. Again, just to reference the digital divide, as you may remember, I spoke about this last year. As a result of all the changes in usage in COVID, our investment in digital products has really expanded. And apparently one of our more recent statistics is there were 1 million checkouts as of the end of December on just of our Overdrive platform. So I am hearing quite a lot of positive feedback about that. A lot of new products that are being added. This is not to say that the print books are not being used, they are, but the increase in our digital online products is escalating. So in terms of the 2024 budget, you have received our budget package. As always, the library board and staff have worked hard to develop a budget for 2024 that is realistic and resourceful. 90% of our operating budget is funded by our 10 municipal partners. So we do work very hard to balance and maintain the contribution increases against service delivery, rates of inflation, and projected wage increases as negotiated through the Greater Victoria Labour Relations Association. What you have up on, oh, sorry, just going ahead of myself. So the budget for 2024, we are requesting an overall municipal contribution increase of 5.99% increase. Again, we've worked very hard to keep that increase as minimal as possible. That is the overall ask for the system. Pressures to expand our service and reach continue to grow, and they are outlined in the budget notes that accompany the requisition. But we do feel that this budget supports equitable access to services and programs that make a difference to the lives of residents by engaging them in a love of reading and lifelong learning, as well as addressing the digital divide and fostering collaboration, creativity. For what this means for the city of Colwood, the 2024 requisition is based, as you know, on converted assessment values and populations, and that does include rental adjustments. So the request for this year is $1,104,625, which is an 11% plus increase over last year, and that results in a cost per capita increase of $5.45. Just to conclude, before we take questions, just to kind of reiterate the role of public libraries as palaces for the people and the importance that we play in providing a third place to the community. We are the one place where people of all ages and stages are welcome to stay and explore as long as they want, spending time and not money. Making life more affordable is a key priority for both the city and the province, and public libraries fill an essential role in providing individuals with equitable access to the resources they need to thrive and strengthen the entire community. We'd like to say when you come to the library, you have not only freedom, but freedom to belong and discover. So now Trustee Appleton and I would be pleased to respond to any questions. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a great presentation, Maureen. I will open up the floor to council for questions. Seeing none, Councillor Day, no? Okay. I just have two questions, actually. So at one time, many years ago, when it existed, the West Shore Literacy Group was alive and it's making a comeback this year, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. Are you participating with them in any degree? Because you used to provide the facilities for them.
Yeah, the network is very active, and yeah, we're looking forward to doing what we can to support. I know space is something that everyone is needing more of. So yes.
Thank you very much. And the second question, which is, I always like learning new things here. So I was sort of a bit interested in that one slide that you had where you said for every dollar invested in a library, you get $6 in return in economic.
Yeah, that is a study that originally originated with the Toronto Public Library, but it's been kind of repurposed and reapplied across Canada. So it's an average, yeah, but it is huge value. Yes. Yeah.
So do you know what that means? Like, what does that mean?
Well, I think you could interpret it in many ways. The amount of money that you might spend on, individual purchases, what you're saving by borrowing things from the library. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you
By
very
using
much.
the library. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Olson.
Hi, thank
Hi.
you for that presentation. I just have two questions. One is, I like that you've removed the fines. I did see that news story and I
Yeah.
think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Have you seen, so two questions, have you seen like a big return of people coming back because there was that barrier of the fines? And number two was just that I noticed in your budget, it shows under revenue that you still have fines listed and it extended into 2025, 2026. So just looking for some clarification.
No, that's a good
Thank you.
question. It's too soon to tell because, it just went into effect on January 10th. But certainly in terms of what, the numbers I have, we will see 30,000 out of 135,000 active cardholders will see overdue fines removed from their accounts. So that will make a difference. So that's about 22% of our cardholder community. And anecdotally and also just factually, libraries that have instituted this have all reported that they've had a very significant surge return of people, that not just people that had blocked or overdue fines, but also people that maybe the perception that they could have an overdue fine might kind of have made them shy away from it. So we're anticipating that that there will be a return, and also building on that, it is something now in terms of promoting the use of the library that this is a really good news story to include. And your other question was the what? There is still a line item for fines. Yeah. When the budget was put together, it was before this had been approved. Yeah. It was a significant implementation project plan that needed to kind of go before the board. So yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Maureen and Andrew, for coming out.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yep.
Thank you.
Beat the snowstorm home
Yeah.
now.
Stay warm. Thank you.
It's not that we're missing a bunch of councillors tonight because we're all suffering from illness right now.
I'm sorry.
So I
Yeah,
dragged
no, we
myself
were
in.
looking for Ian.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah.
Oh, he's actually he's business, but everybody else is sick.
Oh my goodness. Well,
I know.
well, I hope you feel better soon. Thank you. And really
Okay.
good to see you.
Thanks
Thank you
so
very
much. See you later.
Thanks.
Okay, we will get on to the new business 2024 to 2028 financial plan. And hopefully council, we're going to try to get through this tonight so we don't have to have a second meeting on Thursday. There's a part of this, the actual financial plan. You've probably seen 90% of it already during the service reviews, which was great. And basically Jenn will cover the changes on this, and that the most interesting part is the beginning of the presentation in actual fact. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenn.
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. You're correct. So with tonight's agenda, it is the first publication of the consolidated financial plan. With last week's budget deliberations, we had published excerpts. And previously last fall, when we were in service review, we did the detailed review of the operating budgets. Tonight's focus really is a bit of a deeper dive into the proposed debt and the financial implications associated with this financial plan when it comes to the debt financing. We'll also take a little bit of a deeper dive into the reserve funds, in particular, those that are funded through development activity, those that are funded by way of grants, as well as a number of reserves that we utilize to fund sustaining our existing infrastructure. We will then move into the financial plan highlights, and we'll talk a little bit about what has stood out throughout these budget deliberation processes, and ultimately what is driving our change in taxation. At any point, please, raise your hand. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll take pause. But with that, we'll get started on a review of the city's debt. This is an excerpt from page 144 through 146 of the draft plan. Currently, the city has approximately $6.7 million in debt outstanding. Almost all of this debt relates to our sewer infrastructure, and we finance, we fund the debt servicing costs through local area service parcel taxation for those properties that are within the defined boundaries. As you heard from us earlier in budget deliberations, we are proposing to take on new debt. And so I wanted to take a moment just to walk you through how that will impact our ratepayers. The third quarter 2023 financial update, we did notify council that we had retired equipment finance loans, specifically loans that had been incurred to service 2 pieces of fire apparatus. We had retired those early. And so with that retirement, we have approximately $500,000 in existing budget related to debt servicing that is no longer required. So that's between both the equipment finance loans that were retired early, as well as the Q Center arena debt coming due in 2024, and to a lesser extent, the debt that was outstanding related to some Triangle Mountain drainage infrastructure works. So with that activity there, we have approximately $500,000 that is providing funding support for what we are proposing to take on within the next 2 and 3 years of the plan. You've heard from me in previous budget deliberations speak a little to some of the rules that we must follow under legislation when it comes to acquiring debt. The liability servicing limit is one such rule that we will refer to. And simply put, when we reach out to the MFA to seek for debt, there is a limit on the amount that we can obtain for the community. The MFA will look at our controllable sustainable revenues. We cannot have annual costs exceed 25% of our controllable sustainable revenues. This draft financial plan for 2024, we're looking at approximately $28 million in recurring sustainable revenues. 25% of that amount is $7 million. So what does that mean? That means that we would be allowed, generally speaking, to service debt up to annual costs of $7 million. It's important to remember that we always need to have a funding source for servicing our debt. So currently our budget right now, we have approximately $500,000, not $7 million within the operating budget that can be utilized before we incur either a tax increase or before we propose a different funding source.
So, Jen, just quickly, could you define controllable, sustainable revenues for everyone?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. Simply put, those are revenues that are within the city's control and that we do expect to continue into perpetuity. So, for example, general taxation is considered, our user fees where we set the bylaw. So building permit user fees are considered, payments in lieu of taxation are considered. Examples of what is not considered would be operating grants, capital grants, that sort of revenue that tends to fluctuate, that would not be considered. But I always preface, we don't generally have existing funding for new debt servicing. So it's always important to keep in mind the implications, which is the purpose of tonight's presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
So as you heard from us with the detailed review of the city's capital plan, we have approximately $4.6 million in spend related to active transportation road infrastructure projects within our sidewalk and bike lane program. These works are underway. Design is virtually complete. That we were back before council mid-fall last year with updated cost estimates for these works. And so this year, you will see us return. I believe we're scheduled at the next or the February 12th council meeting to introduce the loan authorization bylaws to support the debt related to these works. The financial plan estimates the financial implications associated with this issue, estimating the borrowing costs at a little under 4.5%. It's important to keep in mind that we do earn some earnings back on our principal repayments. So the effective rate, which is really the true interest rate that we would be anticipating, is closer to 3%. The plan does propose a 30-year borrow to finance these works, and it proposes that we utilize taxation to fund the annual debt servicing. And you'll see it in a few slides from now, but because of the existing debt servicing that is coming off the books, we don't anticipate a tax increase associated with these works. Pleased to answer any questions you may have with respect to.
Councillor Grove?
The percent limit there, the 4%, for example, that includes the principal and the interest. So it's the actual payment that we're obligated to make, inclusive of the principal.
That's
in
correct.
that 7% or the 7 million you're talking about, right? Okay, yeah.
Thank you, through the chair. That's correct. So the 7 million is inclusive of the entire debt servicing payment, both the interest and the principal on an annual basis. So when we look at the implications of this issue in isolation, we anticipate it would utilize 4% of that limit.
Do you have, Councillor Day, I was going to ask you if you're monitoring her. Okay, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted Jenn to speak briefly to our anticipated borrowing, given we've talked about a lot of capital intensive projects, including renewals of public works and city hall, and there's quite a few big ticket items looming in the future. And when you're presenting this budget, they're not obvious to us. So I just wonder if you would just give us a quick recap of where we are in terms of where we're trying to get to.
Through the chair, thank you for that question. To clarify, are you referring to where we are in terms of existing debt and what we anticipate in terms of the proposed debt?
Well, we're looking right now at our long-term debt and looking at our sidewalk and bike lane program and saying that as debt retires, we're taking on new debt to take its place to fund projects that we have approved for the sidewalks and the bike lane programs. But we are not looking at what else is required in the future of the city to maintain the good governance of the city.
It's coming in the next few slides, actually, Councillor Day.
Okay, thanks. I'll wait.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So yes, this slide here, we're just looking in isolation at what we will be incurring to support the previously approved active transportation works. And then moving forward, you are correct. So I believe this is the third financial plan that incorporates the anticipated implications related to the public works operations facility. I'll start the cost estimate. This is a Class D. This is a preliminary cost estimate. This cost estimate was previously presented both in 2022 and in 2023. It does include a contingency factor, and it did include inflationary estimates based on a 2024 construction year. We anticipate design in 2024 and moving into construction shortly thereafter. This is absolutely one of the city's capital infrastructure works where we are proposing debt financing. And I would suggest, given that these works alone exceed the current debt that is outstanding for the city, this perhaps is one of the big ticket items that council may be referring to. Similarly, with the active transportation, we are proposing a 30-year borrow. And this dollar amount, this cost estimate would be subject to a public approval process. So we would return with loan authorization bylaws and we would move through that public approval process. When you heard from our team earlier in budget deliberations, the intention is to move on design work this year. And of course, at these dollar limits, we would be back before council in terms of any contract award associated with these works. Please answer any questions you may have with respect to the debt implications associated with the Public Works Operations Facility. And so I did want to highlight the cumulative effect of both of those debt issues and to highlight the property tax increase that we anticipate would be required to support both of those. You'll see this year and next year, we don't believe that there would be the need for a property tax increase with the debt servicing that is recently retired and will be retiring in 2024. The existing operating budget can absorb the anticipated implications. When we move into 2026, we do believe it would be an approximate 1.4, 1.5% increase. You heard from me in previous meetings with respect to the RCMP detachment expansion. We were last before council, Q4 2023. Council ultimately directed that we do seek the financing through the Capital Regional District. That is why that has not, the implications of the detachment facility have not been incorporated into the city's financial plan, because ultimately that would be through the CRD, and those implications would be within the CRD's requisition. There are a number of regional service changes, sub-regional service changes that will also impact the CRD requisition. So it would be appropriate to have a more fulsome conversation then. But to be direct, as I have been previously, while those implications are not included within the city's tax, there would absolutely still be implications on the city's property tax notice. Now pause, I do see a question.
Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that clarity, Jen, because that's a big ticket item that's on the horizon. I guess my question is, with that looming debt, whether it's funneled through the CRD or whatever, I mean, are we comfortable with our funding envelope with the MFA or does it impact that envelope as far as debt servicing? Is there a relationship there, or is it completely different because it's coming from the CRD?
Thank you through the chair. Fantastic question. We believe that there will be an implication on our debt servicing. You can see right now with what we have proposed in this financial plan, we still have 83% of our debt servicing remaining. I have no concerns that we would be anywhere near close to what our limit is. When we spoke about the sewer utility operating budget, I did highlight our sewer utility, specifically the city's sewer user fee, will see increases moving into this year, next year, and beyond as we continue to transition and have that utility fully fund the CRD's requisition costs related to the liquid waste management plant. That will have an effect on our general CRD ratepayers within the city. For those ratepayers that are not subject to a sewer user fee, the CRD mill rate for the city will decrease as we transition those costs to the sewer utility. We will then see, we anticipate with the detachment expansion for the RCMP facility, an offsetting increase. So overall, For those ratepayers that are not sewer users, the RCMP implication in isolation, I'm not speaking to any of the other CRD services. Overall, it may negate with that transition. We're under a 5-year transition, as you'll recall me discussing with the sewer operating. So thank you for the opportunity to clarify that.
Two questions for you. One, because I don't think we did decide what we were going to do with our 6.7 million, right?
I believe you are referring to the Growing Communities
Yes, the growing
grant.
community. Yes.
Correct, not explicitly. This financial plan does propose some spend on parks infrastructure, and
Okay.
we will highlight that later this evening.
Okay.
But you're correct.
Did it empty it then when in
No.
this proposal? Okay.
No.
So potential, I'm just saying potential, it could be used, it could maybe used against the Public Works operational facility then.
When we have spoken about the Growing Communities grant, we do believe that it could be a qualifying funding source for the Public Works operations facility. In addition, with respect to the West Shore RCMP detachment, I will speak a little bit later this evening with respect to the proposed police DCC that we are actively working on and expect to come to fruition in 2024. That will also provide at some time funding towards the RCMP detachment facility, and any funding generated there would of course offset what our ratepayers would need to pay. I'll speak about that
That's great.
a little
Thank
bit
you.
later.
You answered my question. So the second question I have, is it possible to smooth out in 2026, the 1.43% proposed tax increase just for this right now to service principal and to service our debt? Could that be smoothed over like 2025, 2026, 2027, or is it some kind of financial requirement that you have to do it all in 1 year?
The short answer is it absolutely could be smoothed out. Later this evening, we'll look at the composition of the city's proposed tax increases with this financial plan.
Okay.
As you know, we are increasing taxation annually to support transfers to reserves for the city's infrastructure.
Right.
So consideration of when we're also looking to increase taxation to fund servicing supported city infrastructure, council may wish to redirect increased transfers to reserve that would provide some sort of smoothing mechanism.
Okay.
There's also
Yes.
opportunities to
Because we're
draw
looking-
down on
yeah.
reserves to
We are
avoid.
looking at this in isolation, so that's the problem right now. So yeah, sorry about that. Thanks.
And so I did want to take a moment tonight. We spoke briefly about the city's projected reserve balances with the introduction of our capital plan review. Tonight is an opportunity to just take a little bit of a deeper dive into how we are funding these reserves and what the projected activity is. And I wanted to start with the development related reserves. You heard from me last week, 24 budget, approximately 65% of the funding of our reserve transfers comes from development activity. So if the timing of that activity is impacted, or if rates, related to amenity contributions, related to changes in provincial legislation, that will of course have an effect on these reserves. Starting with the community amenities balance, in terms of the projected transfer into this reserve, this is based on a unit estimate. It is based on the work that our team did in terms of revenue projections for building and development related activity. So we are projecting units of approximately 880 in year 1, up to 950 in year 2. And then beyond that, the crystal ball certainly gets a little hazy, and it's 440 units that have driven these numbers. We spoke a little bit during the capital budget review about the proposed parks infrastructure capital lead. We anticipate that with putting together some of the design plans, the cost estimates for various infrastructure works, particularly in the area of parks infrastructure, that a future financial plan would absolutely see us proposing spend of the community amenities reserve. So we do anticipate to see that, and we expect that we would be scoping out such work inside of the next year to inform the 25 to 29 financial plan. Pleased to answer any questions you may have. I'll jump through to the next related.
No questions.
Similarly, affordable housing proposed projections for transfers in based on consistent unit estimates. The transfers out is to support the 5-year agreement for the Colwood's Rent Bank program that you heard from our team about last week. Some zoning requirements within the city see amenity contributions to support fire hall. And so those have been projected into the budget. We are currently working on both a policing DCC, very early stages bylaw, as well as a parks acquisition bylaw. When we get through those two programs, we do intend to turn our attention to a fire hall DCC program. And that would be back before council for consideration.
So just clarification, Mr. Earl, and maybe, you know, Jen, with this new, the bills, bill 44, 45, 46, 43, 44, 46, whatever, ACCs, DCCs, CACs are gone then, right? So the new ACCs are the CACs, right? Is that how that works now? I just want to make sure I understand that.
Thank you, Your Worship. ACCs are new, amenity cost charge. And so because councils have been asked across the province to upzone properties relative to bills 44 and 47, the province has also crafted bill 46, where they've granted authority to craft an ACC, and that will apply across the board to all developments. CACs do not disappear. The city of Colwood has CACs that are fundamentally baked into many of our zones, and those won't automatically disappear. There is an opportunity, as Colwood develops its ACC bylaw, to go through a process to determine whether or not we should make changes to our existing CAC framework. However, the legislation as it's currently written enables municipalities such as Colwood to charge both ACCs and where asks go beyond the zoning that bills 44 and 47 automatically approve. When asks go beyond that, CACs are still an appropriate tool for municipalities to use.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Just a note for the benefit of audience members who may be watching tonight or another time online. We're all very familiar with these acronyms, CACs and ACCs, but it can be very difficult for people who aren't as familiar. So I know we have community amenity contributions. I can't remember what ACCs is at the moment, but if we could just lay them out just for the benefit of anyone who isn't sure.
Please, Mr. Earl. ACCs are new though, Councillor Day, with the new legislation.
So an ACC, amenity cost charge, CAC, community amenity charge, fundamentally they exist for municipalities to connect the impacts of development to costs that will come to bear as a result of that development. As communities grow, there's an expectation that improvements are made for that growing public. So for example, the new amenity cost charge, the expectation of the new regulation is that municipalities such as Colwood will create a list of projects that the amenity cost charge could fund. That list will include budget estimates. We will then look at the 20-year horizon and divide the portion of those projects that's attributable to growth. It could be half, it could be a quarter, it could be 3/4. And we would do the math and establish a rate. That rate would be applied per unit. So it's not dissimilar to a development cost charge in the manner in which it's calculated. However, development cost charges are limited to what municipalities can fund with them. And so, for example, recreation centers aren't there, aquatic facilities aren't there. And so community amenity charges and or amenity cost charges are ways municipalities can gather funds as development occurs to help offset the costs, the capital costs of creation of those facilities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Earl. Please proceed.
With respect to the city's road development cost charges program, you heard from our engineering team last week regarding the minor update that is virtually complete. This is an inflationary update for the cost estimates. This will be back before council with proposed fee rate changes for 2024. And then we are proposing a more comprehensive road DCC program update 2 years subsequent. When you look at the proposed transfers out within this financial plan, part of the reason that we're not seeing activity every year and that we're seeing nominal activity in 26 and 27 is really hinged on the pending transportation master plan and the conversations and direction surrounding what improvements we anticipate. You heard from our team a little bit with respect to the proposed intersection works that are included within the financial plan. And the caution that those cost estimates, you know, if we move from a T intersection, for example, to a roundabout, cost estimates will absolutely change and incorporated into this program. And we also expect that with those conversations, we will then be back to refine a financial plan that will see additional spend out of the city's road development cost charge program. The transfer out for 2024 are for infrastructure works underway. Specifically the fourth quadrant proposed for the Machosen-Latoria intersection, the beachlands, which is absolutely dependent on development timing, as well as completion of the Latoria VMP intersection works. Please answer any questions you may have, or we'll move on to the sewer DCC.
Oh, please proceed.
Our sewer DCC program is scheduled for review next year, so we do anticipate having more fulsome conversations. The city, currently there's a number of areas that are exempt from a sewer DCC. So the transfers in are dependent on the specific location of the proposed development activity. You also heard from our team last week with respect to an initiative, excuse me, that will see some support, sewer network expansion plan, and that conversation and that plan's implementation. We do expect to see refined proposed expenditures from this development cost charge reserve. Currently, we do not have planned expenditures from this reserve. Parks Improvement DCC, brand new DCC, was just adopted Q4 2023. When we spoke about the parks infrastructure capital budget, we did highlight this financial plan does propose a new staffing parks infrastructure capital lead. It is our expectation that with this capacity, we would see potential projects, eligible work scoped to be proposed and to be considered for future financial plans. So again, similarly, we do anticipate one, to start to collect within this brand new DCC, and that we will be coming forth with initiatives, expenditures for consideration outside of this. On a related note, we also are moving on a parks acquisition DCC that would fund acquisition of additional parkland within the city of Colwood. So that really concludes the overview of the development related reserve funds. And I did want to comment a little regarding our grant funded reserves. We had a question last week with respect to the city's gas tax. It's the Canada Community Building Fund. These funds certainly can be used for EV conversion, electrification of the city's fleet, really infrastructure that generates increased efficiency with respect to energy would be eligible expenditures. I should have an asterisk next to the transfer in for 2024 as well. The current administrative agreement expires in 2024. We have received the last of our grant under the current agreement, but we have been told that there will be a new proposed agreement, and we expect to see detail on that early 2024. So this financial plan assumes that there will be funding continue, and we certainly have every reason to believe that, but further details on what that agreement will look like will be coming forward, and I expect I'll have an update for council inside of 2024. Climate action. So the city, we will be formalizing a climate action reserve with our reserve bylaw update. The funding for this reserve is related to the LGCAP, so the Local Government Climate Action Plan. Currently, we're under a 3-year agreement, and similarly, we do anticipate that funding will continue beyond that 3 years that was initially announced, and our plan assumes that it will continue. We are utilizing those grant monies to support our climate action initiatives as endorsed by this council, both with the adoption of the climate action plan and more recently with the endorsement of the phase 1 initiatives. This grant also supports the city's climate action planner and the administration of that function with respect to the rest of the initiatives performed by the city. COVID Safe Restart. This was a one-time grant conditional that the city did receive back in 2020. This plan ultimately expects that we will finalize the expenditures of those monies. The remaining related works relate rather to enhanced software infrastructure. So we are utilizing this to fund our website refresh, as well as the municipal business software. It is providing some funding. Nominal balance remaining, I do expect we'll see some impact with our 2023 year-end audit, because this grant has also helped offset where we have seen a reduction in revenues as a result of COVID. Colwood has been relatively not impacted in that regard, but for example, our casino revenues, if those are not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels, we can recognize this funding and ultimately transfer it into our general surplus where it would have no restrictions. So I expect this is the last you'll see in terms of the activity relating to that grant. The grant that has received a fair bit of conversation, certainly around the council table, is that of the growing communities. So we did receive the 6.6 million. We will ensure that we have a standalone reserve. This financial plan does propose that we utilize a portion. We still ultimately have a little over $5 million remaining, but that we utilize and put this grant funding towards parks infrastructure, advancing parks infrastructure. And so specifically, if you look at page 140 of the draft financial plan, that's where we have outlined the parks infrastructure works related to Colwood Creek, Lookout Lake, and Ocean View, specifically design exercises and costing to support enhanced facilities, washroom facilities in those parks. And so this plan is proposing that we utilize some of this grant.
I just want to confirm that there was no time limit on this, was there?
There's an expectation that this grant was spent within, I believe it was either 3 years or 5 years. This financial plan is proposing. We do believe that we will have this grant spent well within the time limit. And similarly, what I don't have highlighted on this slide, but I absolutely do need to highlight, similar with the community amenities, part of it is capacity and staffing resources to dedicate to these infrastructure works. And so we do believe that inside of 2024, we will be in a position to dedicate the resources to come back with cost estimates for proposed expenditures of this grant for council to further consider. But this financial plan does propose that we start to utilize this grant towards parks infrastructure, as we previously highlighted during the capital budget and as outlined on page 140, but including design for washroom facilities at some of our parks. But I will pause. You know, as with any aspect of this plan, if council wishes to change direction or to, you know, provide further direction on how funds are to be used at any time, please do so. You've heard from me the city's sustainable infrastructure replacement plan. It's a 2019 plan. It's under review. We have been working alongside the budget deliberation prep to get an updated plan in place so we can bring that before council. Right now, we have approximately 9 reserves that we utilize in part to provide sustainable funding. One of the actions that we will be proposing with the update to that plan is that we further refine those reserve balances so that we have sustainable infrastructure replacement reserves for each of our major infrastructure classes. For example, facilities versus roads versus fleet and equipment. And that within, you know, major use types, so sewer versus fire rescue versus general, when it comes to fleet and equipment, that we, excuse me, have those reserves better defined. Because I will, excuse me, highlight, you know, that is one of the challenges. This reserve here, it provides funding for sustaining our existing infrastructure, but it is also to provide funding for new fleet. And you heard from us during the capital budget review. And so that certainly is a recommendation of administration, financial administration, that when we do this review of the plan, that we do look to refine these reserves. It in part will lend itself to better planning for the future and to understanding just how sustainable we are or aren't. All of the next, you know, 9 reserves, the funding for these is primarily taxation. Investment earnings are a funding source for our reserves. As well, we utilize our casino earnings to fund these reserve transfers. You heard from me with the introduction of the capital plan. I believe it's approximately 10% of our transfers to reserves are funded through taxation, and the casino revenues to a much lesser extent. We have currently budget approximately $300,000 a year, and that does in part fund these reserve transfers. So really, I don't have too much to add other than we will be back before this council. I anticipate inside of the first quarter of 2024, recommending a proportionate allocation of these reserve opening balances, and then commenting on where we currently are in terms of what we are transferring in and what our updated plan proposes. I did want to pause on the police building. 2023, we proposed a tax increase of approximately it was $130,000 to phase in the implications of the debt servicing related to the detachment. You heard from me at the introduction of this updated draft financial plan. I continue to propose that we keep that increased transfer into the reserves. And when we are back before council in early 2024, we will propose a reallocation of those funds within the city's existing sustainable infrastructure reserve balances. We will not propose that we maintain this specific to the police building, but ultimately, we believe if we can maintain what I will get to shortly for a tax increase for 2024, 1.65% increase for reserves, that will set us up well, especially as we consider in future years the implications of the debt servicing for city facility needs that may see us take a pause or smooth out some of these increased transfers. This will set us up very well if we can maintain the 1 plus the 0.65% increase. We spoke during the capital budget about the proposed accessible washroom for St. John's Heritage Church. And we are proposing that we utilize the reserve dedicated for this facility. That may drive a deficit into the reserve balance. We will monitor the expenditure of the funds. And similarly, we do anticipate that with the proportionate reallocation of our sustainable funding, that deficit will be adjusted. I wanted to take a moment. We highlighted the draft tax increase when we introduced the operating budgets at the onset of service review last fall. I spoke briefly when we introduced for capital budget deliberations last week. I was just speaking about the 1.64% increase that we are proposing we maintain to support our sustainable infrastructure reserve balances. Overall, this draft plan is calling for a 4.9% increase. So we're looking at a little over 2.9% to support city service delivery. We do have a couple of cost drivers related to enhanced asset management, specifically software costs associated with our fleet telematics, as well as associated with our recently acquired software, asset management Univeris contract. And then the additional 1.64. That's what brings us to the 4.9. And I do want to certainly pause for questions. You know, there's a number of, as we consider each of the city's service areas, there's a number of areas that are annually, driving pressures on our taxation. This financial plan continues to maintain an additional police strength, an additional RCMP officer annually. This financial plan proposes an additional member of our fire rescue team every other year. This financial plan proposes the introduction of a parks infrastructure capital lead. Specifically, it's proposing that we fund that through our existing capital infrastructure works reserve in year 1, moving into tax implications in 2025 and 2026. When we spoke about capacity requirements within the area of community planning during service review, we spoke about the mid-year introduction of a grant assistant, of an administrative assistant. This financial plan maintains that proposition, but that function, that capacity be funded through taxation. And so that is incorporated. When we consider the average annual increase under this financial plan is approximately 5% annually. it's important to remember that there are changes that can be made to future years. We spoke about those a little bit earlier. For example, when we look at year 3, 2026, we have a couple, major implications, being the e-com transition. If that continues as we expect, that's a 2.5% tax increase over year 2 and year 3, as well. The full implications of the debt servicing to support city facility. So these are factors to keep in mind, but at the highest level, this is the breakdown of the change in taxation and the tax increase under this draft plan. I was previously approved at a 4.5% lift. And I will pause. I do see Councillor Day has her hand up.
Councillor Day, please.
Thank you. I know it's not our job to monitor other household expenses, but that really is the driving force behind a lot of our decisions in trying to keep our tax rates lower. And so I think it's important when we start looking at 7% and above, that's territory that's going to be very difficult for our residents to manage, in conjunction with, everybody's kind of coming to the same conclusion at the same time. The CRD borrowing will be costly and will be reflected on our tax notice. And that's when it's going to make Colwood less appealing to new families and youth and people who really need homes. So I think it's important when we look at these numbers that we're trying to reach a relatively level playing field where taxes are affordable and predictable. So I just caution that something's going to have to give, at least for me, in terms of what our expectations are in 2026.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Can you just quickly remind me, I really wasn't paying attention 2 years out or 3 years out, 2026, but the city services, jumps up pretty big for 4.2%. Can you just remind me what's in that, just high level?
Certainly. So at the highest level, the primary drivers 3 years out, city facility debt servicing, public works operations facility, policing, e-com. We are anticipating a 2.5% tax increase to support the anticipated costs that currently we are not directly responsible for. Currently, those costs are shared between federal and provincial levels of government. We have received notice. We haven't received detail, I would suggest. But as far as we know, that transition is stated for April 1st, 2025.
What I'm talking about specifically is the 4.2% for city services.
Yes.
I could see the add-ons for the others. It's pretty clear, but I still don't understand 4.2.
Absolutely. So 1.0 increase in policing strength annually is over 1% lift. In years 1 and 2, our new construction taxation, we anticipate will generate close to $900,000. We absolutely use that funding to fund the impact of growth on our community. So in part, it is funding the additional police officer annually. This financial plan, I refer to the crystal ball, but it does get a little hazy in terms of what we anticipate for new construction taxation. We have budgeted it to decrease. And so that right there is one of the direct reasons that increase is occurring, because we are proposing that additional officer. Tonight's agenda does propose 4 staff recommendations, 3 of which pertain to other jurisdictions. Specifically, there is one recommendation before council to endorse increased officer strength in 24, increased officer strength in 25. I would certainly suggest, like any city service delivery, annually, unless directed otherwise, at a minimum annually, you will hear from those teams during service review. So whether, you know, council chooses to continue to support increased resourcing in the areas as have been defined during the 24 review, you may wish to change that. The annual service review provides such opportunity. But to be direct, that is why you're seeing that increase from 25 to 26 is we're anticipating we may not generate the same level of increased taxation, of increased new construction taxation, which does provide funding for some of the new. Thank you for that question. You know, and perhaps if no other.
Dave, Council Grove, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask about the RCMP building. It's going to the CRD, the funding, but is there some way to understand or talk about that effect, were it to be in this budget, so that we'll have an overall sense of where it is? Right now, I'm missing something, or it's just not there. I would like to hear what
Certainly,
the impact would be if it were in there.
Through the chair, the one challenge in terms of commenting on the impact is that we right now are exploring additional funding sources for that debt servicing cost. Specifically, we are exploring a policing DCC, as is now allowed under recent provincial legislation changes. And so I also wouldn't want to mislead. We believe that that policing DCC will provide some, if not all, of the funding to support those works, in which case there wouldn't be an impact on ratepayers. Or there may be, but we really are in preliminary stages of that work. Last year's financial plan anticipated that the RCMP detachment debt servicing would be approximately $1.1 million annually.
And so my last question, the 4.9% is good news. From everything I understand, maybe some smaller municipalities are going to be lower than us, but ones that are similar in size right now, I've heard some pretty big numbers right now. So outstanding work by staff on this right now. So I guess my question is, how solid is that, and what are the risks?
You probably don't want to hear me flip pages. We do highlight the financial plan risks within this published document, but I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to that a little. Policing, we certainly have changed our budget practice in recent years. For those of you who are around the table for plus years, we used to budget for our full share. We are responsible for 90% of the RCMP's contracted policing costs. Those costs tended to actualize annually under budget. So we shifted our budget practice a few years ago. We budget for 85% of the RCMP contracted costs. Should those costs actualize on budget, that certainly is a financial plan risk. There would be some exposure there. We continue to monitor that. I don't believe there's any reason to change that budget practice. We spoke with respect to the fire rescue operating budget overview. As council's aware, we are members of the IAFF. Bargaining is underway. We believe this plan will support the outcome, but again, until bargaining concludes, that could present a financial plan risk. In terms of the projected debt servicing implications, you know, we've estimated those based on just shy of 4.5% lending rate. The current rate today has decreased slightly. So I don't believe that to present a risk. However, Public Works Operations Facility, that's a Class D estimate that is before design. So that certainly present a risk. New construction taxation estimates, year one, it's almost bang on to what we expect will actualize under the completed roll that we received earlier this month. Certainly when we get out to year 3, year 4, year 5, I would suggest that presents a risk. Overall, this is a sound financial plan. It's comprehensive. It certainly demonstrates I heard tonight that there are big ticket items, and there certainly are. And we did highlight with the introduction of the capital plan, year 1 and 2 are really well scoped out. We've got design for a number of infrastructure works. We are moving on those works, but as we move into year 3, year 4, year 5, we have not really populated the financial implications of certainly where the city intends to go. And when I say intends to go, we have a number of master plans that will be guiding. We have facility, feasibility, recreation spending proposed. We don't have the capital implications of that into this financial plan. There's been some great conversation about capacity. This financial plan does recognize some of that. We are proposing increased capacity in a number of service areas that will support delivery, both from an infrastructure stance, parks infrastructure, as well as operationally. I hope that summarizes some of what I believe are the risks associated with this plan.
Excellent summary. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, we'll let you move on then.
First of 4 staff recommendations is before you. We are looking for approval of the West Shore Park and Recreation Society's draft budget and requisition as presented. Overall, West Shore Parks and Rec, their requisition increased 4%, which was consistent with what they anticipated a year ago.
Can I get a motion, please? Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you. I see they're all here in a batch. I don't know, do you want to do them individually? Because I'm happy to move the staff recommendation as presented, all 4 items, Your Worship, unless you choose to sever them or something.
We can do that, right?
Thank you.
Make sure we get a ruling on it. We can do that, right? Yep. Can I get a seconder on it? Okay. Councillor Grove seconds. Open it for discussion. Seeing none. Any opposed to the motion? Seeing none. Motion carries.
So with that direction, staff will return with the draft financial bylaw for consideration. I propose that we return February 12th with that bylaw for consideration. Unless council directs otherwise, I would look for a resolution to not hold this Thursday's special meeting that is currently scheduled.
I'll make the motion. Councillor Jensen seconds. Discussion. Oh, Councillor Day.
No problem. I was trying to move it, but that's fine.
Okay. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. No meeting Thursday. Thank you very much. A motion to adjourn. Before I do that, I just want to make sure that I acknowledge the outstanding work by CEO, CFO, and all the staff. I can actually feel like a part of a team here. It was good teamwork. Everyone did really, really well. Really proud of everyone. I think that this was done in a very professional manner, and it made the process so simple. We weren't repeating ourselves over and over and over and over. So I just like to pass on, my highest commendation to all the staff for all the outstanding work you did on this. Just phenomenal. And so that's just on behalf of all the council. I'm sure we all feel this way going into this. Yeah, especially for the newbies. So it's just that it was a great process and just would like to thank you. At this point in time, look for adjournment right now. Councillor Olson and Councillor Grove. Discussion. Any opposed? Thank you very much, everybody. Great job.